Society is riddled with contradictions when it comes to protecting women. On the surface, countless rules and norms claim to safeguard them. But a closer look reveals a disturbing truth. These so-called protections often serve to excuse men's behavior rather than challenge it. Instead of holding men accountable, society shifts the burden onto women, expecting them to adapt, sacrifice, and compromise. The result? A system that demands women adjust to a hostile world rather than demand men behave decently. This hypocrisy is glaring in many aspects of life. For instance, Muslim men often argue that women should accept marrying an already married man, and wives should not object to their husbands taking another wife. The reasoning? It's for the protection of women. They claim that unmarried women are vulnerable, exposed to the harsh realities of society. Without the shield of a husband, they say, these women are at risk of being exploited, manipulated, or harmed by unscrupulous men. Better, they argue, for a woman to enter a polygamous marriage than to fall prey to predators lurking in the shadows of society. But wait, why does no one dare to ask the most obvious question? Why aren't these so-called dangerous men being held accountable? Why is the spotlight always on women's vulnerability and never on men's predatory behavior? Why isn't the focus on educating, disciplining, or even punishing those who pose a threat? Why is the solution to marry off women rather than to correct the men who are the real problem? Why must women be the ones to sacrifice, to adjust, to settle? Why must their lives be rearranged, their dreams compromised, just to protect them from men who refuse to control themselves? Why does society place the burden on women to navigate a world full of men who are not taught self-restraint? Why are women expected to adapt to a hostile environment rather than the environment being made safe for them? Why is the solution always about women accepting less, giving up more, and expecting nothing from men in return? Is this justice? Is this fairness? Or is it merely the path of least resistance, a cowardly surrender to the status quo? It's as if society has quietly agreed that men cannot be changed, that they are forces of nature, wild, uncontrollable, excused from accountability. This silent consensus is not only dangerous but dehumanizing. It suggests that men are mere beasts of instinct, incapable of reason, compassion, or morality. But isn't this the real problem? Isn't this narrative the very root of the issue? It absolves men of responsibility, freeing them from the consequences of their actions. It places the blame on women for existing in a world where men are not taught to respect them. Why is this accepted? Why is this normal? Why is society more comfortable policing women's lives than teaching men basic decency? Why is the conversation always about shielding women rather than correcting men? Why are women told to be cautious, modest, and obedient, while men are allowed to be reckless, arrogant, and entitled? This hypocrisy extends further. A sister endures harassment in silence because her brothers would likely demand she give up her freedom rather than challenge the harasser. Yet the same men feel entitled to flirt and harass other women, dismissing it as harmless fun. Why are women taught to fear men rather than men being taught not to be feared? This question cuts to the heart of a brutal truth, a truth so ingrained, so normalized, that it passes unnoticed, unquestioned. In certain societies, women are conditioned to be wary, not just of strangers, but of the very men who are supposed to protect them. Fathers, brothers, even sons, they are figures of authority but rarely of trust. A daughter stays silent about her fears, knowing all too well that her father might blame her instead of confronting the problem. A sister endures harassment in silence because her brothers would likely demand she give up her freedom rather than challenge the harasser. In these societies, the solution is always to restrict the woman, never to hold the man accountable. Picture this. A young girl walks to college every day, passing by a construction site. There, a worker leers at her, his eyes following her every step, his words laced with vulgarity. She feels exposed, vulnerable, frightened, but she says nothing. Why? Because she knows the harsh reality. If she confides in her father or brothers, they won't confront the man. They won't protect her right to education, her right to walk the streets without fear. No, they will lock her away, telling her to stop going to college. Problem solved. But here's the bitter irony. It would never occur to the other workers to intervene, to tell their colleague to stop harassing her. To them, it's just boys being boys. It's harmless fun. It's her problem for daring to exist in public. Why should he change his behavior when society accepts it as normal? Why should he respect her when no one expects him to? The injustice doesn't end there. Even within the walls of her own home, this double standard looms large. If a son misbehaves, parents often look the other way. They murmur quietly, "He's an adult now. It's better not to provoke him. Who knows what he might do?" It's a chilling statement, revealing a brutal truth. They are afraid of their own son. They fear his strength, his anger, his power to harm. They choose silence to avoid his wrath, tiptoeing around him as though he were a ticking time bomb. Yet, in the same household, if a daughter were to make a similar mistake, she would face swift and merciless punishment. There would be no hesitation, no fear, no caution, because she cannot fight back. She is powerless against their authority. And so, the cycle continues. Sons grow up learning that their anger is power, their actions unquestionable. Daughters grow up learning fear and silence, conditioned to accept blame for simply existing. It is a system that not only fails women, but also fails men, raising them to believe they are above accountability, above consequence. How long will this cycle of fear and impunity continue? And who will dare to break it? This is the real tragedy. Society's refusal to confront the root cause of women's vulnerability. The problem isn't women needing protection. The problem is a system that refuses to civilize such men. Isn't it time to challenge this narrative? Isn't it time to demand more from men? Isn't it time to stop telling women to survive and start telling men to behave? And let's consider the other side of this twisted logic. If women are expected to marry already married men to avoid falling into dangerous hands, what about those very men who are labeled as dangerous? Are they merely monsters lurking in the shadows, forever cursed to be predators? Are they to be discarded, shunned, treated like rabid dogs society needs to avoid? Is that the solution? To quarantine them like a disease while the rest of society continues as if they never existed? But here lies the hypocrisy. These men are human beings. They are sons, brothers, husbands, and fathers. They are individuals capable of change, redemption, and growth. Yet society condemns them without question, branding them as lost causes. Why is no one concerned about them? Why is there no effort to reform them, to educate them, to hold them accountable in ways that offer a path to betterment? Where is the outrage at the failure to civilize them? Where are the systems designed to mold them into protectors rather than predators? Society washes its hands of them, casting them out as irredeemable villains, while burdening women with the responsibility of protecting themselves. This abandonment is nothing short of cowardice, a refusal to face the root of the problem. By labeling them as inherently dangerous, society justifies its own negligence. It is easier to fear them than to reform them. It is easier to sacrifice women's freedom than to confront the uncomfortable truth that these men are a product of societal failure. Yet until this changes, the cycle will continue. Fear breeding fear, blame breeding blame. And all the while, the question remains, who will take responsibility for these men? Who will dare to civilize the so-called monsters? Why then does the burden fall so heavily on women? Why are men granted the luxury of exemption? Why must women bear the weight of sacrifices, adjustments, and compromises while men walk free from scrutiny? Why is it always the woman who must navigate her life around the threat of male behavior, and never the man who is held accountable for being that threat? This narrative is deeply flawed. It is time to question it, to challenge it, to shatter it. It's time to stop asking women to protect themselves by changing their lives and start demanding men to change their behavior.